Welcome to highlights of the 91st edition of the Bretagne Classic Ouest-France with me, Jez Cox. From Brittany, of course, and the penultimate European round of the men's UCI World Tour. Lots of big names present, all the big names that perhaps aren't at the Vuelta. Tadej Pogacar, Wout van Aert, amongst them, of course. Rolled out for 255 kilometres in one great big anti-clockwise loop, and right from the off, a little breakaway of 6 riders went clear. Luke Rowe, Pierre Rolland, Evgeny Gidic, the Kazakh champion, Chris Hamilton, the Aussie, Johan Means, the Belgian rider for Bingo Pal Sources, and then Martin Urienstad, who was on a brilliant ride for the Norwegian Uno X team. About half distance, riders started to get a little bit nervous in a very steady bunch, and we started to get a few spills here and there. This rider had tried very early on to get clear and stay clear, Samuele Zoccorato, and in the end he decided to let the breakaway develop a gap and then try and ride across to them. It didn't quite work out that way though, and things were starting to hot up behind as teams lined up to start the chase in the final quarter of this very long classic one-day race. Unfortunately, that meant we started to see crashes, particularly as we got to the upper northwestern section of the course, just north of Plouay, where the typically rural Breton roads became increasingly more narrow, twisty, and rutted at the edges too. We did see a few nasty crashes. This was the bubbling up of a chase group, though, that started under the pressure of AG Desert Citroën team. We were trying to set things up for Benoit Cosnefroy, last year's winner, where he beat Julien Alaphilippe on the dip and the rise to the finish in Plouay, and a very strong chasing group led by Jan Tratnik of Slovenia and Bahrain Victorious, of course, hoovered up some of our original breakaway. Luke Rowe had done long turns to try and keep them clear, those 6, but these were the forming second and third groups who were going across to them, and they were strong ones too. Rui Oliveira doing his best to work for Matteo Trentin, who was also coming up into that group behind them alongside Stefan Kung and other very strong riders. Pavel Bittner and Samuele Zoccorato tagging on to the back end. It was a good day for the Italians today too, getting involved in the pretty warm conditions, very light winds in Brittany. We had a group that seemingly was way too big though, that was absorbing our 6 riders in the lead. We had a coming together of something like 15 riders. Jan Tratnik knew it was too much and used his climbing prowess as we entered and came very close to that finishing circuit to go clear, and he drew with him 2 other riders as well. Andrea Piccolo of EF Education Easy Post was strong enough to get to him, but there was one rider making his way across to that forming breakaway by himself. Wout van Aert did it solo, and it was just too much for the rest of that chasing peloton to cope with. They caught up with him, and we had a mopping up of the groups that had formed in front of them as well. A very strong group, but Wout van Aert left chasing really by himself. Jan Tratnik was still out front until he was joined by Andrea Piccolo, and he led across the line in the company of Samuele Zoccorato. Zoccorato cresting the finish line for the first time, ready for that 112-kilometre loop, the traditional Plouay finishing circuit for the Bretagne Classic. Those 3 were still clear with 8k to go, but then they'd been caught, and the lead out started because we suddenly realised that young Arnaud Delis was in there, and Lotto Soudal, who'd been chasing UCI points these last few months to try and survive in the World Tour, did a big lead out. Wout van Aert was chasing everything that moved. He was completely isolated by himself and left to do all the chasing, and he was tiring, there was no doubt about that. Going under the kilometre mark, it was last year's winner, Benoit Cosnefroy, trying to lead out for Oliver Naesen, who was tucked in third wheel, but he had Biniam Girmay in there, and Arnaud Delis, and of course Wout van Aert. The sprint was opened after Arnaud Delis came off the wheel of Jasper de Buist, and then spraying out to his right, Wout van Aert opened up. And Axel Laurence, the young Frenchman, coming close to Wout van Aert as they came towards the line for B&B Hotels KTM, and only just missing out to the former Belgian champion. Van Aert had to do it in the end all by himself, despite the pacemaking that had been done by his team early on in the day. In the end, he was extremely isolated, but still coming out on top. Brilliant final win, but some very impressive results around him from young riders. And this could well be the moment we bring the attention to young Axel Laurence. There he is in the green to the right-hand side of the shot, still only 21 years of age and only just dipping out of the way of Wout van Aert as they came to the line. Alexander Kamp had a great ride, the Danish national champion on the left of your screen there, just coming around them and taking third on the podium. There they are, Wout van Aert, Axel Laurence, Alexander Kamp, and Arnaud Delis, unfortunately just off the podium, but a great final sprint. Two Italians in the top 10 in Piccolo and Fiorelli, and Biniam Girmay in the end taking sixth. Wout van Aert has signalled a clear message to his rivals for the World Road Championships in Australia. He is in sparkling form and happy to do it solo should it be necessary. A great final sprint. You can catch it all back, and it's well worth doing so, by the way, on the GCN app and of course at Discovery Plus. Go and check it out.